Welcome to our Science of Canning segment titled Lid Technology. I'm Jessica, home canning expert.
I'm Brandon, lab expert.
Well, most of you are probably quite familiar with the two-piece lid that we manufacture that goes on all of our canning jars. What you may not know is all of the development and science that has actually gone behind that lid and understanding why it works the way it does. I know it works every time that I follow a tested recipe, but give me a little bit more of the science since this is your thing.
All right, well, as you said, we have a two-piece lid, and some people might wonder why we have a two-piece lid. There's some one-piece lids out there that I think might perform exactly the same. Well, this lid has been around, it's proven, and it has some unique properties that a one-piece lid doesn't have. The neat thing about this lid is that when it goes on the jar, and then you put the band on, you can remove the band later. And that's important because sometimes in a recipe you'll have some food that purges, we call that purging from the jar. And if you can't remove the band after processing and then clean the threads of the jar, sometimes those get stuck and you can't get them off. And that might be rather frustrating when you go to your cupboard and want to pull out your favorite salsa and you can't get the band off.
It'd be gross too.
It'd be gross, it might get a little moldy under there.
No, thank you.
So that is why, a primary reason why there's a separate band from the lid. Now this lid during the process will vent a little bit. I don't know if people have noticed once they put their jars filled full of food in the water bath, they'll see some bubbles coming up. And that is air being purged from the jar, the headspace of the jar. Now it calls for a 1/2-inch headspace, so you put your food in there and there's an airspace up there.
Right.
Well, that airspace actually helps in sealing the jar because when the food in the jar is heated, that airspace expands, and so it's going to purge air out. It's a high pressure in there, and it's going to kind of burp some air out of the jar.
Which is why we always tell consumers to only put your band on fingertip tight.
Yeah, you don't want to crank it down like you're Thor or somebody like that. You don't want Thor in the kitchen when you're doing home canning work.
No, so essentially it's kind of like a placeholder for your lid.
It's a placeholder. You know, we say fingertip tight, so I'd put it on there just a little bit past resistance. And then over time, you know, it's going to allow air to escape. But then when it cools, that headspace is going to collapse. And that's what pulls the lid down, and you'll hear the button pop down, the ping, and then you'll know that the jar has sealed. And so that is very important. So then when you pull it out of your water bath, you're going to take the ring off, the band, and then you're going to clean the threads. And then you could put the band back on there because, like me, if I take a jar of salsa somewhere to a Super Bowl party, I'll forget the band and then I won't have a way to close it back up. So, you know, you might want to put the band back on there before you put it in storage. So then I want to show you this nifty cutaway over here. This is actually a cross-section of the lid. This is the gasket that actually does the sealing.
That's amazing how many little bubbles are in there.
Yes, and that sponge-likeness will actually will help the lid to seal any irregularities in the finish or anything like that of the jar. But if you crank it on too tight, you'll actually squish this, smash it down, and then that way it won't perform like it should. So that's why we recommend fingertip tight. So the robustness of this gasket is very handy in making sure that you get a very airtight seal, very good airtight seal when you use it. So that's basically how it works. That's all I have for that.
Well, that's fantastic. I think a lot of people are probably quite interested in understanding how our lids work. I know we talk a lot about no longer needing to simmer the lids because all the development and testing you guys have done in the lab, you found that no longer is a step that's needed. And I think this will also just give a lot of folks a lot more confidence in understanding how this two-piece lid works. And when you're following a USDA recipe that adheres to USDA guidelines, whether through them or on freshpreserving.com or through our Blue Book, you're going to know that this lid's going to function as designed when you're following those recipes. So that's really great information. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you also have enjoyed this segment of Science of Canning.